Hello and welcome to our broadcast. We are chatting with you from Hanover, New Hampshire at the Tuck School of Business. If you want to let us know where you're joining from, you can drop that in the comments. So we'll get started in just a moment here. Thanks so much for everybody who is here and will be joining. We're going to just jump right in and get going with the reason why we've all convened here today, to hear a little bit more about career services from Tuck. And we see people joining from all over. Thank you. Great to see everyone.
Wow,
Yeah.
Washington, D.C. represented well already.
Great. Well, we look forward to hearing from more places, more corners of the world. But we'll get going with some introductions and then jump into some more conversation here as we go. And we'll definitely have time for your questions. My name is Amy Mitson. I'm one of the directors on the admissions team at Tuck. Nice to be back on YouTube Live with GMAT Club. As some of you know, I've been in admissions for many years at Tuck, have been here now for more than 20 years. Never imagined that, but it's been an amazing opportunity. I feel like over this period of time, I've definitely had the chance to not only gain so much insight into admissions at Tuck, working with our students, applicants, alumni, but also I feel like I've been able to live my life as a student sometimes. So I've tried a lot of new things over the years, from mountain biking to ice climbing to volunteering with the Dartmouth track team, and been engaged in all sorts of activities across the campus, which you definitely have time to get into some new things here as a student. But for now, I'll just leave it at that and say I'm so glad to be here to share a little bit more with everyone out there about career services from Tuck. These are many of the questions that you have for me, but we are very fortunate to have an expert joining us. So I'll let Stephen introduce himself and he can jump in here.
Thanks, Amy. Hi, everyone. Seeing people from India, from Seoul, Korea, another from India, Krunal, Thakur from India, DC. So awesome. Thanks for joining us, guys. And keep putting your locations up there if you haven't already. So my name's Stephen Pidgeon. I'm a Tuck 07. So that means I graduated from the MBA program 19 years ago, although it seems like only yesterday. So let me tell you a bit about myself. So I did my undergraduate degree actually in film and TV. So completely, not business-like. Actually spent about 10 years making film and TV programs, mostly in the UK, but some in the US. And got to that point where I wanted to make a change to my life. I was getting good at one thing, and I needed to be able to tell the world, hey, you could consider me for other things. I'm a intellectually curious kind of person. I'm a hardworking person, but you get to that point where you're almost already pigeonholed to something that you didn't, have a chance to think too much about. So came to Tuck as a student. When I came here, I brought my wife and my two very small children. So happy to talk about that as well. We had the best time of our lives. It's just an incredible place to be. After Tuck, I went and worked as a consultant, which was something I arrived having a hypothesis that I might like to try. Had the chance to go and intern at McKinsey in London, and then went back there and worked there for about 4 years, which I really enjoyed. And now I have the privilege to work back at Tuck, to live back up here in the beautiful Upper Valley, which is essentially like living in a vacation resort. We have our own ski resort. We have just all of the nature here, and it's just this perfect small town in the woods. So very happy to be here now to talk to you about all things careers. As somebody who I was the first in my family to go to university. I was certainly the first in my family to even consider a graduate school. So as somebody who sort of put down the money and wrote the check to come to do, the MBA, I have a lot of empathy and sympathy for where you are right now. You're looking at what's the pros, what's the cons, what am I going to get out of this? And so I take that very seriously when I manage my team, when we show up for work every day. You've come here, in order for this to work, you want to get the job that is going to make it work. So we are all about helping you with that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Stephen. And that is so true. It's many alumni, especially when alumni recruiters will come back, and we can talk about alumni recruiters and recruiters more broadly later. But they are always so delighted to return to campus because it is such a special place. And we are very lucky to have them do that. But that's also the beauty of being in this location, is people always want to make the trip back. So that's always a great thing. As Stephen mentioned, talking about careers, obviously, we'd love to take a few moments to share a little bit behind what you see on Tuck's employment statistics page, which some of you may have taken a look at that as you're evaluating our MBA program and the results from student career searches. So I'd love for Stephen to next kind of go into a little bit about what we are seeing on that employment statistics page, and maybe a little bit about what we are not seeing, because you can't put every single job search and every single statistic on that page.
Yeah, oops, that's the wrong button. All right, let me share my screen. Okay, so we should see that come up in a second.
Perfect.
All right, so so this is our employment report, and obviously all of the schools that you're looking at are going to have a very similar page with some similar numbers. So just to walk you through some of the headline things on here, and what I would be looking at if I were you, and some of the bit more insider tips. So I guess this is sort of like tips on how to read these employment statistics. So first of all, let's look at the headline numbers. So 90 last year, this is the class of 2025. The key date that all the schools look at is 3 months post graduation. So this year we ended up with 90. I think we're actually 90.2, which was the same as Darden. And so 90% of people had at some point had an offer. And you'll see there's a difference here between the 90 and the 87%. So 87% of people had actually accepted their offer and they were done and they knew where they were going. So firstly, like why is there a difference between those two? And I think sometimes this is due to with like what you wanted when you arrived. Maybe you came in, you had a very certain target. You experiment while you're here. You learn about other things. Maybe you threw your hat in the ring for a certain job, and then they surprised you and offered it to you. And sometimes the conversation that we have is very much about, is this the right job for you? We get to know our students individually. We work with you all one-on-one. So often I'll be the person to say, listen, when you arrived, you said you wanted to do X and now you've got Y. Is that okay with you? Is that what you want to do? So not everyone is going to accept every job that comes along. And I think the fact that some people didn't accept the job they had represents a reasonable amount of confidence that they're going to go away and get something else. The median base salary, I mean, this is pretty similar across all the major schools. So it's reassuring. It's a number that I was certainly putting into my model when I was working out the costs and the benefits of coming. Let's come back to that in a second. But this is a table actually I did want to just talk about, and all schools should have some kind of table like this. And so first of all, we've got interesting thought. We've got not everyone is actually seeking employment. So of our total students, domestic and international, 268 of them were seeking, but actually 24 of them weren't. So why might that be? Well, you might have already come with a job. We love you guys because we can help you have a great time, but you don't need a job. We had one person who was going off to do another degree. We have great opportunities to go and do dual degrees with places like the Harvard Kennedy School, etc. So often people are going off to finish that. We didn't have anyone come to say to us that they're just taking a break for the summer or starting a family. Occasionally that happens. And then we have a few people who were actually starting a business. So I want to talk about the starting the business. This is actually a reasonably low number, isn't it? Because you'd think, wow, people are coming to do an MBA to learn all the skills to be a founder, to launch their own company. And interestingly, LinkedIn did a survey a few years ago, and they actually found that Tuck scores very, very highly for founders and entrepreneurs, but usually they are maybe 5 or 10 years after their MBA. And certainly when I think about my class, my class who graduated 19 years ago, many of them started with that sort of beginner job, that sort of almost safe job where you're going to learn the toolkit, you get the salary coming in. But many of them then have taken a chance at some point or other to then take the leap and start their own firm. And we've got, from unicorns down to small mom and pop businesses out there. But so that's a thing that I would think is worth looking at. Now, the other thing that I really want you to look at is no recent information available. Now, at Tuck here, you can see this is 0 all the way across. So we've got there's no one in our school that we would say we don't know if they've got a job or not. I find it quite incredible that anyone would have, somebody that they don't know if they've got a job or not. But I would say, and I guess I would say this because I'm telling you about how awesome Tuck is. If you look at some other schools on their websites, you will see that number, and that number, it might be high. So they might have 5% of people, for instance, that they're saying they don't know if they have a job, which I would worry about. Like, you just spent $250,000 at that school, and you spent 2 years there, and now they're saying, well, we don't know if that person's got a job. I'd be even more worried if I can't find this information on their website, because it's got to be out there somewhere, and so that means they're just hiding that. So anyway, that's just some sort of inside tips on numbers to look at. Before I close this page down, I did just want to look at one or two other things. One thing we're pretty proud of is actually we break out our offers and acceptances by US permanent work authorization and non-permanent work authorization. So in shorthand, really, this is sort of Americans. This is international students like I was when I arrived, who need sponsorship. And interestingly, you'll see that actually the US Americans left with 89% offers, and the internationals left with 92% offers, and the accept rates were higher as well, which is somewhat counterintuitive because we read lots in the headlines about America, becoming less friendly to internationals, less friendly to visa sponsorship. But actually, I think when you're looking at the MBA market, which is, the top tier MBA market is the very pinnacle of this sort of pyramid of employment and the quality of candidates, I think we're not seeing this as being an issue. And indeed, I think this year, actually, there have been some changes even to the way that the H-1B lottery is going to be run, which will favor even more high-paying graduates from MBA programs. So let's see, what else should we see here? We got awesome quote from me because we like to have that sort of stuff. But yeah, let's just look at where our students are going. So actually, we had 41% of our students go into consulting, which I think actually puts us at the top across all peer schools for consulting. That's something we're really proud of. It's an awesome job. It's what lots of students want. We are set up in our team to help facilitate that. We actually have, from our 8 career advisors, we have 3 who have worked in MBB firms. So I worked at McKinsey. Erica worked at McKinsey, and Andy worked at Bain. So we are very, very, very well set up to help you with that. And actually, as you can see, in terms of the number of people going into it, it's also the area where there's the highest median salary. And this is a pretty achievable salary in consulting. This is literally like the base salary for any major consulting company. And then we have the spread. Financial services, banking, still a very strong area for us. I think some students ask, hey, you're not in New York, can I get a job in banking? And actually, some of that messaging sometimes comes from our New York colleagues in our New York schools, because their message is, if you want to be a banker, you've got to come to New York. And clearly we can see here that that's not true. You can come to Hanover, you can network with people in New York. Our alumni love coming up here. And we have passionate alumni down there who want to come or who want to visit, have you visit them in the office. Tech, I will say, tech has shrunk in the last few years. You will have all read the headlines. Many of you might be coming from tech firms. It's a changing industry, and the $1 million question there is, what will employment look like in the tech industry once they've essentially spent all of their investment in the next few years on data centers. So we don't know about that, but we keep our relationships with all those great companies. We've got great alumni out there, and then you can see the other spread of the other major industries. I'm thinking now I'll close this down so you can see us a bit more, but then we can go back to Amy's talking points and Q&A, etc. So let me close this down. All right.
Thank you so much, Stephen. And that employment stats page is very easy to find on tuck.edu, so you can go in for a closer look, but we'll continue to talk about some of the things that are beyond and behind that employment report as Stephen just started in on for us. Something that I often say when I'm talking about admissions at Tuck, I always talk about, it's a small, close-knit community. No one is anonymous at Tuck. And that is definitely true, as Stephen points out in the job stats. We know every single student here and who is looking for what, and whether or not that stays consistent with what they said in their application, or if it changes, whatever that is, we are set up to support our students in the job search. We'll talk about some of those interesting career pivots later. If people have an interesting career pivot in mind, you can drop that in the comments and we'll continue to talk about that. But to come back to something that Stephen referred to, 8 career advisors. That's one layer of support that we have for students. Stephen, could you go into some of the ecosystem of resources that we have and how we accomplish this and our students accomplish these results at Tuck?
Yeah, so and some of this is similar across schools and some of this is different. So I'll try and highlight, what's what. First of all, we do have a deliberately very well-resourced team of advisors. I think, our ratio of advisors to students is the best out there. And one of the reasons this is true is that actually we're only here to work with full-time MBA students. So we are not running evening MBAs, weekend MBAs, masters in management, etc. Whereas most other schools are. So if I worked in the career office of most other schools, I'm distracted with other students and having to learn different areas of expertise. So first of all, there is the career office. Secondly, let's talk about the alumni. You've come to a Tuck video. You've got to know we're going to be talking about alumni. So our alumni are by far our sort of superpower here. And all schools, MBA recruiting is really driven by alumni. So, if you are working at Goldman Sachs or McKinsey or Amazon or your own small company, you are personally motivated to come back to your own school and help people even. I was shocked when I came as a student. There are companies out there that will not take your call or let you through the door if you're just a regular person on the street. And suddenly, because you're at the school, someone is literally helping you get better at the interview, helping you through the whole process. So you've got to imagine then that coming to the school with the most passionate alumni, that's got to help there. Now, how can I say that we have the most passionate alumni? So we don't have the biggest alumni network. If you go to Harvard, there's probably hundreds of thousands of people they have in their network. We have about 10,000 people. But here's the crazy thing. When you look at the connection that they have with the school, when you look at, do they give money every year to the school? Do they come back to the school? Our sort of connection there is literally off the charts. And that is real. That's it's not just a sort of a marketing point or a selling point. So I do think having the alumni there to help you, and as I said, whether that's a big brand name firm or this is a small one that they've started. Then, as Amy said, you've got all of Tuck here. You've got a very close-knit team of staff. You've got a very close-knit faculty, and we all live and work and exist in this collaborative small town environment where this is what we do. We gather to help you get through the MBA. And so, we will know you. We will know your dog. We will know your cat. We will know your spouse. We will know your kids. We'll know your ups and your downs. And that's true across the school. One of the reasons for me that I actually chose to come to Tuck, to a place like this, was this idea of I did my undergraduate degree in the middle of a city. So, it was more like I went to the office, I went to the school, I did my class, and then I just dissolved back into the city. When you come here, you live here. You're moving here. It's this sort of old college existence where you bring everything, and this is your life. And so you go through that. You go through 2 years of life with us, with the faculty, with your classmates, with the second years, and then the first years. And so you can start to imagine why the alumni have this tremendous bond and why people have this sort of incredibly immersive, transformative experience. I think the last thing there is the company connections, and of course, yeah, we have all the great companies that you'd expect, and to a certain extent, that's going to be the same. When you look at all the college websites, they've all got the logos of McKinsey, Bain, Amazon, etc. So that's a sort of almost like a check mark that you can just be like, okay, I'll get access to those companies. But again, we keep in very close contact with them. A lot of it is driven by an alum. So, if something comes up with BCG, I know who to text and to get on the phone, and we're having lunches with them, we're checking in with them. So, it's this sort of weird cottage industry, MBA recruiting, where we're just very much, in touch with each other.
Mm. I'd love to jump in. There are two great questions in the chat that perfectly complement what Stephen has started to talk about here with resources to support the job search. So I'll go to the first one. And so it's a follow-up, like talking about yes, the career services team are great connections with alumni, great connections with recruiters, and those relationships that we've built for many, many decades is definitely a source of strength for our students. But what about peer preparation, right? So that was kind of alluded to in the chat. Could you talk a little bit about how the community supports, students are supporting each other's job search? How do they specifically do that at Tuck?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. I remember when I was in your shoes and I was planning on going to a business school. I was expecting a very competitive environment. I was expecting a whole bunch of driven, motivated people, type A people, we might call them. Everyone's a future leader. So I was imagining, why you put those together in this sort of pressure cooker environment of working hard and competing for the same jobs, and there's going to be a lot of competition. And actually, the second I got here, I realized that's not the case at all. And it's almost crazy to me to think about, but people here will help you. The second years will help you, the classmates will help you, the alumni will help you. So let's just sort of think about that for a second. So first of all, one of the major mechanisms that you learn about careers and you get access to student help is clubs. So, we have passionate consulting club, finance club, tech club, CPG club, real estate club, etc. One of the interesting things that I didn't learn until after I'd graduated from Tuck is that most of the other schools, you have to pay to join these clubs. And then they might even be selective. You have to apply, get let in, pay admission. Which if I'm you and I'm just already spent $250,000, then I'm going to be like, well, I'm only going to join one or two clubs because I've only got a certain amount of dollars left in my pocket. We don't do that. You can join as many clubs as you want. You join this club, the students take you through curricula, they will give you practice interview after practice interview after practice interview. I remember actually, but when I was preparing for my consulting interviews, the last interview I had, there was this second year who I was really, I thought, smart guy. I was a bit intimidated by him because he was a second year, and it doesn't matter how old you are, the second years are always like seniors. But actually, he played on my ice hockey team because everyone at Tuck plays ice hockey. And I said to him, hey, I've got an interview coming up, and he's like, forget it. This evening we're doing a practice interview. He gave me about 2 hours. He really gave me all of his insights, and by the end of it, I was just like, I just knew I was ready. And he said to me, you're ready for this now. So yes, you will spend 10 hours, 50 hours, 100 hours even doing mock interviews with classmates, with second years, in addition to the ones you're doing with us. I remember driving down to Boston for a second round interview with Chrissy from my study group. I was driving, I gave her a lift down there. We were both going for the same interview for the same job, and we were like, testing each other on questions and concepts on the way down. And it never even occurred to me to think, I wonder if in some strange, if in some way I shouldn't be helping her get better at getting this job. It didn't even cross my mind. We were just helping each other out. So yeah, there's enough success for everyone, and it's just in the water here that you'll do this afterwards. You'll help the first years when you're an alum. You'll help the students. You'll help people who are hoping to get in as well. It's just in the DNA.
Yeah, absolutely. Someone in the chat referenced a service that sounded like it would help people with case preparation, and you will have your fellow students for that. As Stephen mentioned, people will drop everything to help support you because it's a mix of students from very different backgrounds, industries, life experience. They may have been through this thing already that you're seeking to do, and they are going to drop everything to support you. So thank you for bringing that up in the chat. Perfectly followed what Stephen helped us to start talking about here. The other question, again, and maybe it's too wrapped into one, maybe sharing a little bit with us about like what happens when the job search doesn't go to plan.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and that may be wrapped a little bit into the question of when, students have their summer internship and they come back in the second year and they decide that wasn't for them and they, relaunch into recruiting. So it's kind of two big questions, whether you want to respond to one or both, but what happens when the job search doesn't go to plan? And then, what does it look like if somebody's coming back after a successful summer internship, but that's not where they want to go full time?
Yeah. So, and I think the first major point where it might not have gone to plan is, if you had come in with a very certain hypothesis around, I think I would like to be a consultant or an investment banker or get into a leadership program in one of these companies that does campus recruiting. So, they're coming here in the fall, and then you're going to probably interview in December or January. And then you might get to those interviews, you might come out of the other side of those interviews and you didn't get what you wanted. And that can happen. If you're planning to come, you need to plan for the worst as well as plan for the best. And every year, you get people coming in to my office in January saying, yeah, I gave banking my all. Now that has passed on and now I need to reevaluate. So, how do we work with you? I mean, first of all, that's when it really gets one-on-one and personal. When 150 of you are all trying to get a consulting job, to a certain extent, we can batch you up and give, you can come to a class and go to a big event. But when now you need someone to talk to, you need someone to be there for you and to listen to you. And sometimes it's a bit then going back to, okay, but tell me more about you. What are your superpowers? What do you love to do? What have you thought about? Maybe you've never, put the plans into action, but what are some of the other things you've thought about? I mean, the good news is, and I think some students don't know this until it comes, but actually there is another wave of recruiting in the first year. So, from now onwards, we will have many, many hundreds of job postings coming in, and they're coming in now across a broad variety of things. And some of those are really, really cool. That might be more things into tech. It might be earlier stage companies. It might be media. And so we've had a lot of people, let's say January the 10th, thought their life was over. February the 20th, now I've got this amazing job that everyone's jealous of, which is not to minimize the psychological discomfort of going through that. But we are here to help you, and there are avenues. And I think, and the interesting thing is we can then point you to alumni as well who are like, yeah, this person thought they were going to do this, now they're doing this. I mean, the other thought is, I think when people come to business school, you might even think, well, I'd be open to a lot of things, and then suddenly you kind of get funneled into some of these tracks like consulting or banking or big tech, etc., without you really giving it a second thought. And yet most of those jobs our alumni are not doing 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the line. So, it's wrong to sort of get caught up in the my life is only going to work if I get that job at McKinsey. I mean, it's easy for me to say because I had it, but then yeah, like I turned it down. I walked away from it after a while, and my life didn't end. Um, and as Amy said, I think the second then inflection point is you come back from an internship, and and that's why I like the 2-year MBA. First of all, you get to try something for the internship, so you do it, you've hypnotized yourself into like, yeah, my life will be amazing if I can work at Bain or Goldman Sachs or Amazon, and then you come back and you're like, man, I didn't like that at all. That wasn't what I was expecting, or that didn't fit for me or for my family or whatever. So we do that. We have lots of people then coming back and rethinking. Um, and I'd say there are some jobs that are easier to pivot into, and they're the jobs that they are looking for just generally super smart people. And there are some jobs where maybe it's going to need to look a bit more like your resume. So that's another thing as well. There's nothing wrong with coming to business school with a strong resume and building on that and going to the next thing in. So if you've been doing accountancy and finance, maybe then you are going to leave here and go and work it on the CFO track in an awesome company. That's okay. We don't all have to sort of make these big heroic pivots.
Are there, but on that, right, there are some
Yeah, of
that
course.
you might highlight, like you think
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like, well, that person really did that. I wasn't expecting that. You and your team have so many conversations
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
first year students and second year students and Tuckies all over the place. But are there some career pivots or some students heading into surprising summer internships? What's going on now that nobody's heard the story yet and is not in the employment report yet?
I mean, there's the sort of the pivot from, off the wall thing to like the big marquee job, which, I think that's always kind of fun. So, this year we've got a guy who was a professional American football player, and, who didn't have a ton of business experience. His business experience was showing up to get hit on the football field on a daily basis. He now tried out banking and yeah, did very well and ended up with a number of choices and is going to an investment bank. We had a ballerina who had only ever been a ballerina and went to work for a major consulting company. I like the other stories as well, where somebody came in. Like, here's another one. We had a guy came from India, worked in his family's hotel. It wasn't a big company. It was like reasonably small local hotel, and he'd helped the family manage that. And he came and he said, "I want to be in tech. I want to be a product manager." And we're all like, "That's hard, like, what's your tech background?" And well, I don't really have much of a tech background. And he did a really nice job. He used the resources here. He joined our Center for Digital Strategies. He, learned about the industry, learned about the job. For his summer, he got very much a stepping stone. He went to a very early stage transportation startup. So it was tangentially related to his sort of hospitality background. I think this was one of these, like, you rent a scooter in a city, but not the big names you've heard of. He nailed that internship, but there was never going to be a full-time job. It was more like, if you will let me come and do this, I'll be awesome. Spent the whole of the second year networking with the alumni community, and yeah, we left with a job with one of the major online hospitality travel tech firms. So there was a certain logic to, okay, he came from hotels, he's going to a sort of a Travelocity, Expedia, that sort of type firm. But I was just really pleased for him that he'd made that work by really working at it the whole time. So yeah, we have the sort of big swings that sometimes hit, and then we have people just like diligently working it.
Yeah, Stephen could go on and tell these stories, but we're gonna, start to take a few more questions, and then we'll have to wrap up. Though we'd love to spend all day talking about Tuck Career Services. There was another question that came through, talking about, like, what is the thing that you'd recommend to students to do when it comes to like getting a jump on the job search? You know, we talked about the ways that career services helps you prep when you're in the MBA program. Is there something that you would recommend across the board to candidates, no matter what they're trying to do, to like do some sort of prep before they start at Tuck? Is there a quick piece of advice you would give there now that we were talking about all those different resources?
I think the first thing is to take some time to be and you'll be doing this for your MBA application, but reflect. You know, think truly about what your strengths are and where you thrive. You know, what are the types of work or the days at work when you've come home and you're like, wow, time just flew there, or you know, you were just flying. And you know, we can talk about this concept of flow or being in the zone. So when are the times in your life when you've been in the zone? And gather that, be ready to stay true to that. I think another thing is, and I see from the chat that some of you have been looking at like where our alumni are, what they're doing. I think that's another thing to do. Spend some time on LinkedIn. I think that's a very powerful tool. Look at where are alumni of the program. Are they in the geography I want to be, the industry, the company I want to be in? You don't necessarily need to be reaching out to them all straight away. And in many ways, I'd say maybe hold off on that, you know, apart from one or two, and admissions can sometimes help you connect with one or two people. But even just for you to know, okay, if there's a number of people in the place that I want to be in, then I'm not kidding myself. I think that's a good starting point. And then once you get here, we can help you operationalize that. Whereas if you're like, yeah, I really want to be doing X, and like no one out there in X has an MBA, forget from Chuck, but from any place, then you know, maybe you're thinking, this MBA isn't going to be the slam dunk to get me where I want to be. So that's what I would think. I'd be like, know what you want, know who you are, where you thrive, and then have an understanding of a plan that is in some way based in data and reality. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and we'll thank you for continuing to answer all of these questions, Stephen. We're going to go into some questions that we've seen from the audience here in a moment. But Stephen also mentioned LinkedIn, so I'll just briefly share. If you go to the Tuck School of Business LinkedIn page, you can see the tab for alumni. And again, it's not for you to be reaching out to every single one of them, but for you to see the variety of places and the path that they've taken, which you can easily see in their LinkedIn profiles, which could be interesting to you. An interesting question. We often get this about pre-MBA internships at Tuck. What's your perspective on that pre-MBA internship?
Yeah, it's not much of a big thing. I mean, some people will arrive saying they had done one. Usually it was self-sourced. If we hear of opportunities, we'll post them on our admitted students website, but often we don't. So first, I would say, like, don't be thinking, oh my God, there's this other thing I've got to do because everyone else is doing it. They're actually not. Like, most people are not doing a pre-MBA internship. Firms are not cut out for it. You know, they're not geared up for it. Some of the big firms might have a sort of a get to know us program, which largely is you register your email address with them. They might have a webinar. They might even, you know, have you come visit a local office. But often it's not much more than that. So don't. So unfortunately, I mean, we don't maintain a sort of a big database of MBA internships, and we don't have the capacity to be helping you at like now get ready for a pre-MBA internship because we're currently working with the current students. But yeah, I would say mainly it's not so much a thing. So don't put too much emphasis on that.
Thank you. And another one, seeing shifts in tech recruiting. You probably have been talking a lot about this.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, obviously AI is like the billion-dollar question, isn't it? It's like, how is that going to change all jobs for all humanity? I mean, and if I were to say to you, I know the answer to that, then I'd be wrong. So a couple of things. First of all, we at Tuck, all of the leadership, we are all lifelong learners. We're very interested in this. We're very on it. So literally last week, I was sitting with the dean and the other Tuck leaders in a monthly call now we have with some of our top alumni across this space, and the alumni have all convened once a month just to really share what they're seeing, and that's incredible. Imagine you've got some of the top people at some of the top tech firms, banks, consulting companies, manufacturing companies, all within a sort of a safe space because it's trusted alumni sharing what they're doing and what they're seeing. So that it gives us at least a good baseline of understanding of where we are now. The big thing in tech recruiting, and I think there's been stories about this in the Wall Street Journal. It's essentially, if I'm running a tech firm, I am putting every available penny into building data centers. It's literally an arms race. And I think there's even been quotes from some of the CEOs of the big ones saying, "I'm prepared to go bankrupt in order to not lose this race." And yes, what we're seeing there is then they're spending less on people. So what we're not hearing is, "I'm not hiring a person because the AI can do their job." What we're hearing is, "I'm not hiring the person because I need to spend the money on building a data center," which is slightly different from what we might fear. And in the meantime, I'm justifying not hiring the person because I hope that one day in the future, the AI will be able to do the job. But it does mean if I wanted to work, in a major tech firm as a sort of a newly graduated MBA, that's a more tenuous position than it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago when they were hiring like crazy. So I'd be thoughtful about that. And if anyone tells you they can give you the answer on that, they're, great. I want to hear what they have to say. I mean, the good news is some of our other industries, and again, like consulting, like banking, where these are professional services organizations, whenever there's turmoil, if every company in the world needs to change the way they do their digital strategies to cope with AI, they need help with that. They need investment help. They need consulting help. So actually, our professional services firms are in some ways licking their lips, looking at all of the work that is out there to help transform the way the whole world does business. And we're certainly seeing that with those industries. And then the industries in the middle, the ones who are actually like making the stuff, shipping the stuff, selling the stuff. Again, I think this is a time when they are going to need more. Are they going to need more clever people who can learn quickly, who can adapt to ambiguity, or are they going to need less? I think they're going to need more. And this is the thing that I come down to, like, our alumni in all these spaces tell us tech skills are becoming commoditized. We don't need you to be able to code. We don't need you to be able to even do AI stuff. The thing that is going to become more and more uniquely powerful are the human skills of basically being able to lead a team in a difficult situation, being able to make a tough decision. Wisdom, being able to understand the right thing to do, and even when the AI comes back with something, being able to have that judgment, say, I don't think this is right. Can you do that again, please? So I feel pretty good about the MBA being a good training ground for whatever's coming.
Thank you, Stephen. Our time is moving quickly, but we have time. We'll take another question or two as we go forward. We can see that there. What are companies saying?
Oh yeah, what's the most important thing companies consistently tell you? And this exactly ties in with what I just said. Recruiters come to Tuck. So recruiters hire MBAs because let's think of it as a Venn diagram. They want super smart people and they want people skills. Tuck does very, very, very well on both. And particularly, I would say, is you can go to lots of places in the world and find super smart people. You don't even need to come to a business school to do that. You go to an engineering school or wherever, medical school, law school, you can hire super smart people who could take that smart and be trained in lots of different jobs. What I like about the MBA and what I particularly like about Tuck is that it attracts people who want to do that in a team environment, in a company, a business. And Tuck, I think, of all the business schools, weights more heavily on that than many, and probably than most. And that's what our recruiters say. They say, I can take a Tuck alum and put them into a team and know that they're going to thrive in that team setting. And then likewise, when they become a team leader, when they become a VP, a director, an MD, they are going to be the person who has the people skills. And some of it, a lot of it, you guys will bring that with you. So I think people who have strong people skills, who like being in a team environment, opt into places like Tuck. And then some of it is like the training you get here as well. Almost all the academic work you do is in teams. Sometimes that's really annoying because you just want to sit by yourself and get the right answer, but you have to sit in a study room instead with like 6 other people and convince them or learn from them and go through the ups and downs. But actually, that's what the recruiters are buying. They're buying the fact that when they put you on a team, you're not going to suddenly break down and need to go and sit in a corner by yourself.
Absolutely. The team aspect of everything you do at Tuck from start to finish will benefit you.
Yeah.
And maybe one more question if there's one out there.
Sure.
Let's see. Okay.
Oh yeah. What qualities or characteristics are most commonly associated with candidates who excel within Tuck's recruiting environment? We touched on it to start with. I think the self-knowledge, again, my Venn diagram, not very good. Self-knowledge and a certain amount of realism. And then I would put in a third circle of the Venn diagram would be sort of grit. So, I want you to understand what you're good at. I want you to have, in some way, a target that is, if we can all agree, if you work hard, you can operationalize this, you can aim at it. And then I want somebody who's going to work hard and has maybe been through things in their life where they did have to get up, dust themselves off, and they'd failed and they're going to try again and work at it and work at it and work at it, because nothing here is easy. Every class you take here is tough. Like the learning curve is tough, and you're doing it in this sort of pressure cooker bubble where everyone sees you, and so sometimes you just want to be left alone, but everyone's looking at you. So I want people who what your strengths are, you're willing to learn, and you've got a good target, and you've got that sense of drive and grit and ambition, and you'll do amazing things.
I love that. I think the self-knowledge, the realism and grit, we can start bringing all those together in our personal Venn diagrams right now. So thank you for giving us that framework, Stephen. Also, just highlighting in this conversation the power of collaboration that equals recruiting success at Tuck. Collaborating with career services, collaborating with your fellow students, collaborating with alumni as you go, and realizing that people are able to work together toward the success they're seeking. So many takeaways from this conversation. Stephen, thank you for the initial walk through the statistics page, and then just the free-flowing conversation to follow. Anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Good luck. I mean, honestly, good luck with your applications. I'm super excited to work with all of you. If you get in, if you choose us, I hope you end up with choices. I hope you choose the thing that's right for us. I hope we are the thing that's right for you. And I'm very excited to work with you all.
Thank you. Thank you all for your questions and your interest in Tuck. And thank you so much for your expertise, Stephen. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.